My son is your husband's, so I want half of your $1 million mansion. Sarah, my younger sister's words, fell upon me like a cold avalanche, ironically mingling with the joyful chatter of little Liam's first birthday party. I, Quinn, at 68 years old, felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet, swallowing me whole. Only a week had passed since the funeral of Michael, my beloved husband of over 40 years, and I was still enveloped in a veil of mourning, a dense fog of sadness and disbelief. The pain of loss was a constant companion, an oppressive weight on my chest, but Sarah's audacity and cruelty at that moment were an electric shock that brutally pulled me from my stupor. She stood there, in the center of our living room, which had once been a sanctuary of happy memories, radiant in her navy blue silk dress, holding her son in her arms with a smile that I now realized was one of triumph, not genuine maternal joy. Her eyes, once so familiar, gleamed with a malice I had never seen before. "He is the legitimate heir, Quinn," she continued, her voice dripping with venom and a false compassion that turned my stomach. "And Michael's will guarantees his rights. I have the documents that prove paternity and his wishes." My hands, which held a cup of chamomile tea, a useless comfort at that instant, trembled violently. The fine porcelain almost slipped, but I held it with a strength I didn't know I possessed, a strength born of despair and indignation. Michael's will? A son? With Sarah? The idea was grotesque, an aberration that distorted my entire reality. My sister, my own flesh and blood, had betrayed me in the most vile and calculating way imaginable. A whirlwind of emotions engulfed me with overwhelming violence. The deep and still so recent sadness for Michael's death, the burning and uncontrollable anger at Sarah's betrayal, and a pang of disbelief that bordered on the absurd, making me question the sanity of that moment. How could she? How could Michael? The party continued around us, a scene of innocence and celebration, completely oblivious to the silent and devastating drama unfolding right in its center. Children ran and laughed, colorful balloons floated in the air, laughter echoed, and I was there, at the epicenter of a revelation that threatened to destroy not only my marriage and my family, but everything I believed to be true about the people I loved. It was as if my world, built with so much care and love over decades, was crumbling into pieces before my eyes. If you've ever felt the pain of betrayal from the person you least expected, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow this story to the end. Share your experience in the comments. Still in shock, I managed to force a smile, an automatic gesture of someone who has learned to mask pain throughout life. "Ah, I see," I murmured, my voice sounding strange and distant, as if it belonged to someone else. But what she didn't know was that Michael, my Michael, had told me a secret he had kept for years, and which, at that moment, became my only weapon. Michael and I met in college in Boston in the 70s. He was the typical American guy, ambitious, charming, with a promising future in finance. I, a dreamy young woman from a modest family, but with an insatiable thirst for knowledge and a passion for art. Our wedding, celebrated in a small church in Vermont, was the beginning of a journey of love and partnership that lasted over 4 decades. We built our life brick by brick, overcoming challenges, celebrating achievements, and creating a home that was our refuge. Michael was the pillar of our family, a man of integrity, respected in his community, a loving father to our 2 children, David and Emily, who now lived their own lives in other cities. He was always my confidant, my best friend, the rock I leaned on. The idea that he could have a child with Sarah, my sister, was an affront not only to our marriage, but to the very essence of the man I knew and loved. Sarah, on the other hand, had always been the black sheep of the family. Younger than me, she always looked for shortcuts, the easy life, the glitter of material things. She was never content with what she had. always envying what belonged to others. I always helped her, extended my hand countless times, from when she was a rebellious teenager to the adult woman who lived on favors and temporary jobs. Michael, with his innate kindness, also supported her, offering her a job at his company when she needed it most, and even a place to live for a while. The mansion, the $1 million that Sarah coveted, was the fruit of years of Michael's hard work and my own savings as an art curator. It wasn't just a house, it was our legacy, the stage of countless memories, the home we built with sweat and love. Sarah's threat was not just financial, it was an attack on our history, on our dignity. As she spoke of the will and Liam's rights, I remembered a conversation I had with Michael a few months before his death. He was sick, but lucid, and called me aside, with a serious look I rarely saw. "Quinn," he said, "I need to tell you something I've kept for a long time. It's about Sarah and a mistake I made in the past." At that moment, I didn't know the magnitude of that mistake, but the memory of that day gave me a glimmer of hope. Michael was not the man Sarah was portraying. He was complex, yes, but above all, he was my husband, and I knew he wouldn't leave me helpless. Still with the forced smile on my lips, my mind worked at top speed, trying to piece together that macabre puzzle. Sarah, noticing my silence and what she interpreted as resignation, continued to spew her venom. "Michael always had a soft spot for me, Quinn. You know that. I was the adventure, the passion he never found in you." Each word was a dagger, but I refused to show any reaction. Anger simmered within me, a cold and calculating fury I had never experienced. How could she be so cruel, so brazen? The will, she insisted, was irrefutable proof. She had brought a crumpled, creased copy, which she pulled from the designer handbag I myself had given her last Christmas. "Here," she said, extending the paper to me with a dramatic flourish. "Read it and see for yourself." My eyes scanned the lines of the document, and a knot formed in my throat. It was indeed Michael's will, with his unmistakable signature. And there it was, in a specific clause, the mention of an unrecognized son, with a generous provision of half of all assets in case of proven paternity. But there was no name, only the condition, and the date. The date of the will was 5 years ago. 5 years. That meant Michael had made this provision long before Liam was born. One piece fit, but other questions arose. Why would he do that? And why was Sarah so confident? It was then that I remembered Michael's words, from that day he called me to talk. "Quinn, I need to tell you something I've kept for a long time. It's about Sarah and a mistake I made in the past." That day, he hesitated, his voice choked with emotion, and I, in my naivete, comforted him, saying he didn't need to tell me anything that would make him suffer. "No matter what it is, Michael," I said, "we'll get through it together." He hugged me tightly, a hug that now seemed laden with a weight I hadn't understood. "You are the strongest woman I know, Quinn," he whispered, "and I will always protect you." At that moment, I didn't know what he meant, but now, with the will in my hands and Sarah's words echoing, a new light dawned. Michael was not a traitor. He was a man who had made a mistake, yes, but who had tried to protect me from the consequences. The conversation with Michael, which I had dismissed in my grief, now revealed itself as the key to unlocking the truth. He had tried to warn me, to prepare me, but what Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't imagine, was that Michael, in his wisdom and love for me, had left a clue, a crucial detail that she, in her greed, had overlooked. I held back my smile, a smile that was not of resignation, but of a newfound determination. "Ah, I see," I repeated, but this time the phrase carried a different weight. It was the calm before the storm, the promise that justice would be served. The birthday party for Liam continued around us, a stark contrast to the storm brewing between Sarah and me. She, with a triumphant smile, awaited my reaction, certain she had cornered me. But the memory of Michael's words, of that secret he had confided in me, gave me unexpected strength. I took a deep breath, adjusted my glasses on the bridge of my nose, and with the calmest, most controlled voice I could muster, I looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah," I began, "do you really believe that Michael, a man who spent over 40 years by my side, would build a lifetime of love and dedication only to betray me in such a vulgar and predictable way on his deathbed?" Her smile faltered for an instant, but quickly recomposed itself, tinged with contempt. "He was a man, Quinn, and men have needs. You, with your saintly demeanor, never truly understood him. I did. I was the passion, the youth you could no longer offer." Her audacity was unbelievable, but I held my ground. "Passion?" I retorted, a thread of irony in my voice. "Or would it be convenience? Michael, in his generosity, always tried to help you, Sarah. He offered you a job, a roof over your head, and you mistook that for something more." She scoffed, impatient. "Don't try to twist the facts, Quinn. The will is right here. Liam is his son, and I have the proof." She gestured to the crumpled document in her hands and to the baby in her arms, as if their mere presence was irrefutable. "Ah, the will," I said, taking the paper from her hands with studied delicacy. My eyes again scanned the clause, the date, the signature. Yes, I read it, and I perfectly understood what Michael meant by unrecognized son. Sarah looked at me with a flicker of confusion, but before she could speak, I continued, raising my voice slightly so that some of the closer guests could hear, not out of malice, but so there would be no doubt about what was about to be revealed. "Michael told me everything, Sarah. Not as you imagine, but the truth. He confessed to me that some years ago, when you were going through financial difficulties and threatening to get involved with dangerous people, he made an agreement with you." Sarah's face paled, and her triumphant smile completely vanished, replaced by an expression of panic. She tried to interrupt me, but I didn't let her. "He told me you needed money, a lot of money, to get out of a difficult situation. And he, in his kindness, offered you a substantial amount, with one condition." The panic in Sarah's eyes was almost palpable, but she still tried to maintain her composure. "That's absurd, Quinn. You're delirious with grief. Michael would never make such an agreement. He loved me." I laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "Loved you? Michael felt sorry for you, Sarah. Sorry for your irresponsibility, for your bad choices. And he felt a responsibility as your brother-in-law not to see you sink." The room, once filled with laughter, was now in a tense silence, with some guests looking curiously at our argument. David and Emily, my children, who had just arrived, approached, sensing the seriousness of the situation. "The condition, Sarah," I continued, my voice now firmer and imbued with an authority she had never seen in me, "was that you would never again ask him for money, that you would get your life in order, and that, in return, he would make a provision in his will, a provision for an unrecognized son, which, in fact, was a way to ensure you had a future, should something happen to him, and you found yourself in a vulnerable situation. He knew you were impulsive, and that you might get into more trouble." Sarah shook her head frantically. "Lies! He loved me! Liam is his son! I have the DNA tests!" "DNA tests?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Interesting, because Michael also told me about those tests. He told me that, to ensure you wouldn't bother him anymore, he agreed to a paternity test. But not with him, Sarah. With an anonymous sperm donor he paid for you to use. He wanted you to have the chance to be a mother, to have a stable life, without the pressure of a relationship with him. He wanted to give you a family, even if it wasn't his." The shock on Sarah's face was indescribable. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Little Liam, oblivious to everything, began to cry in her arms, as if sensing the tension in the air. Michael, in his infinite goodness, wanted to give you a chance to start over, to have a family, to have a child you could love and raise. He made this provision in the will to guarantee Liam's future, yes, but not as his son, but as a way to help you, to give you a new beginning. He knew you were incapable of supporting yourself, and that he didn't want to see a child suffer for your choices. He made me promise that, if something happened to him, I would take care of you and Liam, but not as a direct heir, but as a support fund, a help for you to get back on your feet. I stared at her and saw the truth spread across her eyes. He never loved you, Sarah. He helped you. And you, in your greed, twisted his kindness into a betrayal. The revelation hit Sarah like a lightning bolt. Baby Liam in her arms cried louder, and she, in her desperation, tried to calm him, but her hands trembled uncontrollably. "No, it's not true," she stammered, her voice choked. "You're lying. Michael loved me. He told me he loved me." I watched her with a mixture of pity and repulsion. The mask of triumph had completely fallen, revealing the insecure and manipulative woman she had always been. "He told you what you wanted to hear, Sarah," I replied, my voice now softer but still firm. "He manipulated you into accepting his help, into stopping getting into trouble. He gave you a chance to have a dignified life, and you turned it into a plan to rob me." David and Emily, my children, who had witnessed the scene in silence, approached me. David placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of support that gave me even more strength. "Mom, what's going on?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with shock. "Your Aunt Sarah," I said, looking at them, "is trying to claim half of our house, alleging that her son is Michael's. But Michael, in his wisdom, foresaw this and told me the truth." I briefly explained to them about Michael's agreement with Sarah and about the anonymous sperm donor. The disbelief on my children's faces was evident, but they knew me, they knew Michael's integrity, and they knew I wouldn't invent such a story. Sarah, seeing that she had lost the battle, tried one last gambit. "You have no proof, Quinn. It's your word against mine, and I have the will." I smiled, a smile that was not of joy, but of bitter satisfaction. "Ah, but I do, Sarah." Michael, in his meticulousness, left everything documented. Not only the agreement he made with you, but also the receipts for the payment to the sperm bank, the records of the anonymous donor, and a letter written by him, explaining everything, should something like this happen. Sarah's face contorted into an expression of fury and despair. She knew she had been caught. The party, which had once been a scene of joy, was now in complete silence. All the guests, who had stopped to listen to our argument, looked at Sarah with a mixture of shock and condemnation. She, humiliated and exposed, picked up baby Liam and ran out of the house, leaving behind the crumpled will and the shame of her own greed. I, on the other hand, felt immense relief, but also a deep pain. The pain of seeing my sister, my own flesh and blood, stoop to such a level. The pain of having to unmask the truth in such a public and humiliating way. But above all, I felt gratitude for Michael, for his wisdom, for his love, and for his concern to protect me, even after his passing. He had given me the weapon to fight, and I used it to defend our home, our family, and the memory of the man I loved. Life went on, but the scars of that day remained. Sarah, in her fury, tried to contest the will, but Dr. Peterson, armed with Michael's irrefutable evidence, dismantled each of her claims. She was publicly discredited, her reputation tarnished by greed and attempted fraud. Liam's trust fund was established, ensuring the boy a secure financial future, but Sarah had no control over it. She was forced to find a job and face the reality of her choices. I, on the other hand, began to rebuild my life, no longer under the shadow of betrayal, but with the certainty of Michael's love and loyalty. David and Emily became even more present, visiting me frequently and helping me fill the void left by Michael's passing. The mansion, once a scene of discord, became a home again, a refuge of peace and precious memories. I dedicated myself to my passion for art, resuming my activities as a curator and finding solace in beauty and creativity. A year later, I received an unexpected call from Dr. Peterson. Sarah had contacted him, asking to talk. I hesitated, but curiosity and a glimmer of hope made me accept. We met at a discreet cafe, away from curious eyes. Sarah was different, thinner, with tired eyes and a humility I had never seen in her. She told me about the difficulties she was facing, about the struggle to raise Liam alone, and about the deep regret for her actions. "I was blinded by greed, Quinn," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't realize what I had until I lost everything." I listened to her in silence, without judgment. The anger was still there, but mixed with a compassion I didn't expect to feel. "I forgive you, Sarah," I finally said, "but forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just allows us to move forward." I offered her a chance to start over, not with money, but with support. I helped her find a stable job and enroll in a technical course. Liam, now 2 years old, was an adorable boy, and I began to visit them, offering him the love of a grandmother he never knew he had. Justice did not come in the form of revenge, but in the form of redemption, a second chance for Sarah, and a brighter future for Liam. Today, at 70, I look back and see the journey I've traveled. The pain of losing Michael is still present, but the wound of Sarah's betrayal has finally healed. I learned that true love is not just about happy moments, but about the ability to forgive, to rebuild, and to find the strength to move forward, even when the world seems to be falling apart. Michael, in his wisdom, left me not only a material inheritance, but a valuable lesson about character, loyalty, and the importance of protecting those we love. Sarah, over time, became a different person. She graduated from the technical course, got a better job, and for the first time in her life, found dignity in honest work. Liam, my great-nephew, grows up happy and loved, with a grandmother who visits him regularly, and a mother who has learned to value what truly matters. Our relationship, though it will never be the same, found a new balance based on respect and acceptance. The mansion, which Sarah so coveted, remains my home, a place where Michael's memories live and where new stories are built. David and Emily, my children, are my greatest support, and the family, which seemed to be falling apart, grew stronger in an unexpected way. Sometimes life presents us with challenges that seem insurmountable, but it is in these moments that we discover our true strength and the ability to transform pain into wisdom. If you have ever faced betrayal or a difficult situation, know that resilience is within you. Share your story in the comments, leave a like if this narrative touched you, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming adversity and life lessons.